Hello, I'm Christopher Lee. Welcome to Ghosts. Welcome to Hobbs Manor, my friend. Please excuse me for calling you out at such a late hour. I trust you had a pleasant journey. Mark my words, you have an eventful time ahead of you. Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Dr. Marcus Grimalkin, and I have devoted my life to the study of the paranormal. It is time for me to decide once and for all whether ghosts are reality or fiction. I hope that you can help me to make this decision. My visit to Hobbs Manor, a house that is world famous for its ghostly activities, is the climax of my life's work. I came here to gather the evidence around me, the documents, films, and records that I have painstakingly collected over the years. Make use of the research material that you will find inside the house. You will have to look carefully for it, as objects in this house appear to gain a life of their own. Use my findings to make your own decisions. If you join me on my quest, you may be rewarded with great knowledge, but be warned, you may not like everything that you find. Are you sure you want to leave the house now? Should you see a portrait fall from a wall, look carefully at the subject of the painting. This unfortunate person may soon be dead. Should you see As you walk around Hobbs Manor, you will almost certainly find some portraits and films of experts like myself in the field of the paranormal. Tony Cornell has over 30 years' experience in the field of paranormal study and investigation. He has developed a sophisticated ghost detecting machine called Spider, which travels with him to the hundreds of ghostly locations that he investigates. Dr. Susan Blackmore is a senior lecturer at the University of the West of England. She has a doctorate in parapsychology and has written widely on the subject. She was awarded the Distinguished Skeptics Award in California in 1991 and has been involved in the production of many television programs on the paranormal. Robin Furman is a trained psychologist and expert in the field of the paranormal. He founded Ghostbusters UK in 1984 and has since investigated hundreds of hauntings. Father John Nuttall is a Roman Catholic priest who preaches in the county of Surrey. He is fascinated by the subject of ghosts and has helped members of his parish in the past who have experienced hauntings. Bettiscombe Manor is quiet these days, but it was not always so. The villagers in this lonely nook of the Dorset countryside still recall tales of a terrifying scream that was said to originate from a skull kept in the manor. In 1685, Azariah Pinney, the lord of Bettiscombe Manor, was banished to the West Indies for his allegiance to the Duke of Monmouth. A man of acute business sense, Pinney made good his exile and prospered in the God-forsaken colony, accruing a vast fortune which was turned over to his heirs on his death. 2 generations were to pass before any of Azariah's kin dared set foot on English soil. It was his grandson, John Frederick, who returned to England in 1734 to reclaim the family seat in Dorset, bearing considerable riches and a Negro servant from the Isles. However, shortly after their arrival in the country, Frederick's manservant, Isaac, was stricken with a malady that racked his body for days and only eased when the wretched fellow approached death. It was on his deathbed that old Isaac, who had served the family well, pleaded with his master that he must be taken back to his homeland for burial. If not, a terrible curse would befall the manor and all who lived therein. A phlegmatic man, John Frederick was not given to superstition, and duly ignored his slave's dying wish, discreetly burying his body in the local churchyard. It was then that the howling came. At first, many thought it a prank played by schoolchildren, defying one another to remain in the churchyard after dark. But when one of the youngsters returned home, ashen-faced and shaking with fear after hearing a strange groan emerge from one of the graves, the games stopped and few would enter the graveyard again, and the wailing continued, louder than ever, a wild, keening sound that chilled the soul and which could be heard for miles around. The villagers knew the source of the shrieking, but Frederick would not heed their desperate pleas and refused to disinter the remains of his servant, and so the howling was joined by tremors and thunderclaps that shook the very foundations of Bettiscombe Manor. It seemed as if Isaac's corpse had risen from his defiled grave and was hammering angrily at the doors and shutters of his former household. If Isaac couldn't rest in peace, neither would his master. The din was appalling, but it had its desired effect, almost. Finally, 2 sleepless months after Isaac's burial, John Frederick wearily succumbed to the inevitable and exhumed the body of his servant. In such haste was the deed done that Isaac's rotting head was rudely detached from his body. Yet rather than return Isaac's complete remains to the West Indies, Frederick shipped his body back for burial, but kept the skull as a ghoulish memento of his recent travails. The skull was deposited in the loft, and the lord of Bettiscombe Manor retired for an early night, comforted by the belief that he had done all in his power to appease Isaac's vengeful spirit, and a blissful silence descended upon the village once more. And so it stayed, until John Frederick's own death a decade later. However, the new occupant of the manor, William Thornton, had not been apprised of the skull's presence, and upon seeing its ghastly village, had it thrown into a pond behind the house. He instantly learned the error of his hasty actions, as an ear-splitting scream rent the air and drove him to the sanctuary of his manor. Quick were his neighbours to inform him of the nature of the cry, and the penalty for ignoring old Isaac's wishes. But Thornton was a proud man, and steadfastly rejected any attempts to retrieve the skull and let it defile his house again. No matter how much Isaac's ghost bellowed into the night sky, or raged against the manor with his phantom fists, Thornton would not yield. Nor would he accept the accusation that Isaac's clamorous protestations were responsible for an unaccountable crop failure that year, or for the mysterious death of livestock in the region. It was to prove a fatal stand. On a bitterly cold January morning, the lord of Bettiscombe Manor was found in a state of collapse by the edge of the pond, dressed only in a sodden nightshirt. Driven mad with fatigue, his spirit had finally broken, and he had stayed up the long night, raking the pond for the accursed skull, to no avail. He spent the rest of his short, tormented life on a sick-bed in the wing furthest from the pond, but he could not shut out the damnable screeching. Within a year of taking possession of Bettiscombe Manor, William Thornton, a man of rugged health and fierce temperament, was dead, having faded to a shambling shadow of his former self. After his funeral, held many miles from Isaac's former resting place, a handful of villagers recovered the screaming skull from the pond, stole into Bettiscombe Manor under cover of dark, and restored the dread relic to the loft, and there it languished, content and quiet, for well over 100 years, as each of the manor's subsequent proprietors wisely paid greater heed to the legend of the screaming skull than their ill-fated predecessors. Most would never visit the loft, lest they encounter Isaac's spectre in a less charitable mood. But when Bettiscombe Manor passed into the hands of Charles Pomeroy in the early part of this century, events took a bizarre turn. The new owner, a modern gentleman of liberal disposition, promptly removed the skull, now encrusted in dust and a curiously sticky residue, had it polished, and reinstated the grisly heirloom to a more prominent position in the household. It was a well-meaning gesture and an effort on Pomeroy's part to return some measure of dignity to the memory of a former resident of the manor. He could not have imagined what followed. On the eve of the Great War, a torrent of blood issued from the cracks in Isaac's newly veneered skull, staining the mantelpiece on which it stood, and the blood would not cease. So shocked were visitors to the manor that Pomeroy was forced to return the weeping artifact to the loft. There it remained, reportedly oozing blood, when the outbreak of war was imminent. Peace now reigns at Bettiscombe Manor, but should anyone ever be tempted to remove the skull from its adopted home, old Isaac's spirit will scream the place down.
Approached the abbey, walking across the fields, over a fence, looked up, could see the abbey and what looked like a procession of monks, or hooded monks. Couldn't see any faces or anything, but there were definitely monks walking towards the abbey. At this point we heard a cough, which sent shivers down my spine, and as a group of three of us, we all turned and ran, and leaving the scene just as fast as we could. Having prepared yourself to actually believe that they existed, to actually encounter something and feel something, then gives you the exact opposite of saying they don't exist, it can't be happening to me, they don't exist at all. It's very, very, very difficult to get your mind around it.
It was on a Sunday morning, very warm, very hot, about 11 o'clock in the morning, and the group of people I was with went off for a walk, and I decided that I was going to play the trumpet. I was outside, I think I was playing Summertime or something like that, and quite suddenly I was terrified. I mean, I really was absolutely petrified. I was cold, I had shivers down my back, and I was so scared I ran into the house. And I didn't know why I was scared, I just was. What I realised was, when I stopped playing, there was no sound at all, nothing. No birds, no pigeons, the trees weren't moving, none of the trees. Now in a forest, the chance of trees not being moved by wind is almost nil, but nothing was moving, there was no sound at all. That night, I was in bed, I don't know what time it was, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, it was quite late. And I woke up, and again I was absolutely terrified, and I couldn't breathe this time. I mean, I really couldn't breathe. I was, and that was it. But there was definitely something was getting at me that day. The two incidents just couldn't, especially the still trees. I mean, that's the thing. Still trees and no birds singing in a forest. But it was, well, if that wasn't being haunted, I don't know what was. You know, I mean, it's really quite a serious thing, which I'll never forget.
Local vet Keith Michael has assured us that the cat will make a full recovery. And finally, tonight's special report investigates a real-life haunting. The residents of this 300-year-old house, set deep in the countryside of West Yorkshire, England, have been experiencing strange phenomena. An apparition of a woman, known as the Nanny, has been seen in various locations around the house, invariably carrying washing in her arms. Local historian Norman Reed told our reporter that local records show that a wet nurse lived here in the 18th century. Witness Mavis Hartley is convinced that the apparition she has seen is the spirit of this woman. We have arranged for Ruth Brewery, a woman with psychic abilities, to visit the house to give her opinion of the ghostly events. She has not spoken to the residents before and has been told nothing of the events. Ruth's visit to the house proved largely uneventful until she entered the small bedroom on the first floor. She made the following statement to our reporter after the event. As soon as I stepped into the bedroom, I felt a wave of oppressive cold come from the eaves and near the fireplace. I knew that this was a place where the spirit had slept. I didn't need to see her to know she was there. You've been watching Viewpoint. I'm Rhea Searcher. Good night.
Look closely at the cinders within the hearth. If you find any that are shaped like a coffin, there may be a death in the family.
the case at the empty, haunted church, where the team and I went to look because we'd been told by various students and people that they'd seen figures moving in the gloom there. This particular church I didn't know existed, but when we went there, figures did move in the gloom. There were tombstones which had been disturbed. This strange mist filtered into the church. The atmosphere was intensely oppressive. That was probably the most frightening case that we actually went to.
Now, there was one case I think that was interesting from the point of view that my fellow investigator and myself were somewhat scared. You get blasé about this, but we were in a house, an old house up in the Fens, north of Cambridge, and in a room that nobody would sleep in or live in, because they said funny things happened to them, and they were using it to store furniture. And when they put electricity in the house, they put everything else but in that one room. And we're in there and sitting there, and we got all the other helpers, actual members of the University Society downstairs, doing a Ouija board, not to communicate, but to get everybody round so that we could control them. And suddenly there's bumps and thumps coming. We locked the door from that direction across the bare boards. And I'm saying to Alan, this is my friend, Alan, cut it out. He's saying, just cut it out yourself. I said, well, it's not me. And bang, 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 we've got two torches. And we're shining. I mean, we've known each other for years. I knew he wasn't doing it, he knew what, but it got quite scary because it's a thump, 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 you see. And the last thump was on a brass bedstead over my head. And I thought, wow, I don't like this. And Alan said the same, more or less the same thing. People were making a noise downstairs, and we used that as an excuse to go down and tell them to keep quiet. We got to the door, and we forgot that we had put strings across there in case somebody was going to take us for a ride. And we went through there and collided with that, came back, and as we came back, we heard a noise, and we swung our torches around, and we saw a chair going across the room and land bang on the wall. That was a bit scary.
Lots of things have frightened me, but not ghostly things. In the course of investigating supposedly haunted places, I've been down in cellars with no lights on and no torch, just hoping something will come out of the slimy walls. I've slept in several bedrooms where I've been told no one slept there for 20 years, and I sort of go to bed and go to sleep, wishing something spooky would come along. As a child, I can certainly remember seeing apparitional type things and being frightened. But nowadays, if I see something like that, I think, oh, there comes an apparition, or I think it's my own mind, so it's not remotely frightening. I'm quite happy to go to bed at night, see all kinds of things being created by my mind, and they don't spook me. So the answer is no, but of course it might happen. I might get a terrible shock and one day go to a haunted place and see that ghost that I so far don't believe in.
My name is Vicky Clark. I moved in October, and about 3 weeks after that the event started to happen. I did have two other roommates, but they've both moved out now. One left the course and the other one's found other accommodation. So it's just me on my own now. There was one night, it was quite scary. There was us three girls that stay here, living here, and one of my roommates woke up because she'd heard banging around her head, and she got quite frightened about it, and then she felt something brush over her face. So I got up and turned the light on, and we said, look, there's nothing here, it's alright, we're just being silly, because we were getting worried about it at this point. And so we all sort of calmed down, and we turned the light back off, and then I got into bed, and when I got into bed there was a toilet roll in my bed. I don't know quite how it got in there, but and then when I woke up in the morning there was black, like tarry stuff in my bed as well. It was on my pyjamas, and it was on the cover, and it was on the sheet, and it wasn't there when I'd got up to turn the light on, because I'd seen the bed and it was clean, so I don't know where that had come from either. And yeah, one day I went down to the toilet and I locked the door, and when I came back up it had moved a chair all the way across the room to right behind the door. We tried to work out if someone could have done it, but no one could get their arm round the door to pull the chair in enough. Also, we had some pennies on top of a desk one day, and it just it flicked one and it spun on the floor and then settled down. And also bottles fall off the side, but they don't tip over, they land upright. Also, I went home for a week because I wasn't very well, and the girls next door said they heard a lot of noises coming from the room, but no one was in here because I'm the only one with the key now. No one's ever seen anything. It just seems to move things. We don't quite know why.
God! Oh! What's happened? What did he do? He froze. I'd only just got in bed, put my head down, turned the light out, and that lands over there. And the light or something moved here.
Right, that's the front of the doll's house. It's thrown right across the room, over the top of the bed to the door.
Yeah.
The doll's house is in the corner, away from the bed. And the light has jumped backwards from the end of the bed and is now under the bed.
Oh, that's strange, isn't it? What's some little mumsy laugh? Oh! What's that?
The slipper was thrown across the room and hit the door
not my one.
as I was holding the door.
My one!
The white slipper hit the door as I was holding the door.
He hit me on the leg.
Was that 53 years ago? Yes, 53. I counted 53. I think that was right. I'll ask you again, was it 53 years ago? It was. Thank you. Right, we've now established that she moved away 53 years ago. And I'll ask you the question again. Did you die this year? You did die this year. Right. Now, why are you in this house? You shouldn't really be here. You understand that, do you? Do you understand that you really shouldn't be in this house? You do understand you shouldn't be in this house. You do. That was, again, 2 knocks. It's now doing the rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you having a game with me? Oh, right.
Oh, crumbs.
As I asked the question, are you having a game with me? It threw the cardboard box and the pillow right at my face. Well, thank you very much. That was a very good answer. No, just a minute. I'll tell you what it's through. Just a minute. It's through the cardboard box, the pillow, and a heart shape, a square pillow and a heart shaped pillow, right at my face. Now, what do you think of
the one you went cold blimey. It's flying the life out of me, you know, I see it really flying cold. You saw that, didn't you?
Saw it? It hit me in the face.
We were saying hello.
Well, hello. That was a very fine demonstration of what you can do, because I couldn't have better than that. The sooner you get to sleep, the sooner it's going to be quiet. All right?
What's that?
It's
look,
thrown.
some pictures have come.
It's pulled the pictures off the wall.
That's right off the other side of the room.
That is right over the other side of the room, and it is exactly where I was standing when it pulled the picture off the wall.
Oh, Janet, your gymnastics.
Your gymnastic award was pulled off the wall and dropped down.
Cool, that did.
And that happened behind me as I was standing against it, and that was about 8 foot from where they're lying in bed. I'm standing here, and it ripped, it pulled this off the wall, but as I'm standing here.
Janet! Where is she?
No, out the room.
I tried to get out the room and I couldn't.
This time Janet was thrown right out of the room onto the stairs. Oh, it's incredible. How the hell did she get through there?
The door, do you know, she went.
Did the door open? The door was closed when I got up here.
The door opened.
The door opened as she went
got near the
through.
door and it opened like this.
What?
And I tried to get out and I couldn't because of the mat.
The door opened to let her out the door?
Yeah. I was laying with this.
What happened? Tell me what happened. Careful. Tell me what happened.
I was in bed asleep.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I felt something pull me by the arms out of bed.
Yeah.
And I tripped over there and I went there.
Yeah.
And then it lifted me up. Then I sort of, the door opened and I went out the door and I come flying downstairs and it was... I see the door open, I was on my side this way and I looked round.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Come on, go get up then. Come on, what you got to do there?
And you know, I
Just
thought I heard
put your-
footsteps, I wasn't sure.
Fancy opening the door for us, go out the door.
Well, that's the biggest trick of the lot, I think.
Let me hear you say my name. Come on, let me hear you say my name. That's not my name. Come on, my name's Morris. Let me hear you say it. Morris. Say Dr. Belloc. Come on, let me hear you say that. Come on. Let's hear you say Dr. Belloc. Could you close that door down? Say Dr. Belloc. What is it? Just hold that watch on. Now, if you squeak the bed, I can't hear you talking. Now, say Dr. Belloc. Come on. Come on, say it for me, Dr. Belloc. Dr. Belloc. Right, that's good. I shut up the door. I'm 72 years old. I come from Jewel graveyard. And I have right near the church where Rita lives. And all my friends come from there as well. And we all make a game and go to the pub. And then we pick your house. Because I used to live here. And I will tell you some more. And if you don't get anyone else, the second work and Mr. Playback.
I want you to tell me whether you remember what happened to you when you died. Just before you died and just after you died.
days before I died, my day, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
Bill, if you're there, would you answer me the following question? What have you done with Denise's 30p?
Headed down to the radio, downstairs.
Sorry, Bill, can you say that again, please?
Headed down to the radio, downstairs.
Righto, Bill, I'll go and look. Thanks ever so much. Why can't Janet feel you?
I'm invisible.
You're invisible? Why are you invisible?
So I'm a G-H-O-S-T.
Did any friends go with you?
Yes, all of them. All the dogs, 68 dogs.
And what have you got 68 dogs for?
So that they can protect me from you killing me. They can bite your head off.
How can we kill you, Bill?
You can shoot me off.
Now how can we shoot you if we can't see you, Bill?
By praying to God.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Bill.
By praying to God.
By praying to God. So, what you're saying is we could get rid of you by praying to God?
Yes.
The secretary of our society, Ellen O'Keefe, rang me up and said, Morris, there's something going on in Enfield, sounds like a case, poltergeist case, do you want to investigate it? I said, fine, yes, I'll investigate it, thinking at that time that I would only be involved for about 3 weeks. Little did I know. So off I trotted to Enfield and met these people involved in the case. Now, what had happened was this, that the mother had complained that various things as PK, that psychokinetic phenomena, had been going on in the house. One evening, for instance, the children started creating upstairs in the bedroom, and she went upstairs, and the children said to her, well, that chest of drawers over there is moving. And she said, don't be so ridiculous, go to sleep. And she was just about to go out of the room when she saw the wardrobe move. There were many witnesses to the case besides the family, because this is another question I'm often asked. There were outside witnesses in the street who were not involved in the case at all. There was the policeman who came, the 2 policemen who came and saw something happen, and saw a chair slide across the floor. There was a fire brigade, there was a priest, there was the family down the road, the Birkins, the uncle and the aunt and their children, the Nottinghams, the next door neighbours, a neighbour down the road who started complaining that things were happening in her house, the next door neighbours who complained. In fact, I could go on literally forever, the number of people who were involved as either direct witnesses or indirect witnesses. Because one doesn't always have to see everything direct. One sometimes picks up the whole feeling by going into the house, and we had visitors galore, like you can imagine, and people pick up the feeling of what's going on. That's another thing people don't understand about poltergeist cases. It's not just what's happening physically.
It's what's happening psychologically as well. It's very important to the case. Very important, because psychological factors affect what is going on. I suppose that one of the most extraordinary things about the whole case was the voice. Now, this voice was quite something. And how it started was this. On December the 10th, 1977 we're talking about, I was sitting in the room, in the front room there, downstairs, with the mother and the children, and we were just talking, and suddenly there was whistling and going on. And I thought, that's funny, it's very sophisticated whistling. The children can't whistle like that. It sounds like the whistling that Mr. Nottingham does. He whistles quite a bit next door, but he's not there, he's at work. I thought, crazy. Suddenly a dog barked in the room. Fine, a dog barked in the room, but there was no dog there. I thought, well, you know, this is even crazier still. And I began to think, you know, okay, it can whistle, it can bark, and things began to turn around in my head. And it went on quite a bit. Then, lunchtime, about lunchtime, Guy Playfair came along, and I said to Guy, this morning I heard a dog barking and whistling in the room, and there was no dog there. And I said, it was a dog barking. No, he took everything in his stride, he always did. And we decided then that if it could bark and it could whistle, it may be able to talk. And I said to Guy, well, I'll tell you what, if it happens this evening, I'm going to take the children into the bedroom by themselves and see whether it can talk. Now, this was the day that 9 other investigators, most of them scientists, were in the house. So we had quite a lot of people who heard the first noise that was made. About 6 o'clock in the evening, and everybody was there, got the barking and whistling again. Round about 9 o'clock, if I remember rightly, I said to Mrs. Hodson, can I take the children upstairs? I want to do an experiment. She said, okay. I mean, she's used to it by now, she's used to everything. So I took the children upstairs and they got into bed. And in the next bedroom, in the small box room, Guy Playfair was there with his headphones on, and we put a microphone in the room I was in with the children, so he could hear all what was going on. And the barking and whistling was going on. Then I suddenly said, if you can bark and you can whistle, you can talk. Say my name. For quite a while nothing happened. Then suddenly it said, Morris. I thought, good. Good, some results. And then I challenged it again. I said, no, that's not my name, because I didn't hear it properly, you see. It was like Morris, something like that. So I said, no, say it again. This time it said, Morris, quite clearly. Then I challenged it to say Dr. Belloff. Dr. Belloff, one of my colleagues, was there that night. He's a very famous parapsychologist. And it said Dr. Belloff. So I knew that we had a voice. Now, what was this voice? How did it work? First of all, when it started to speak, I thought we had a discarnate voice, what we call discarnate voice, a voice coming from nowhere, out of the air. Then I began to realise, when I watched the children more carefully, and watched Janet particularly more carefully, it seemed to be coming from her direction. Her lips weren't moving. Her mouth wasn't moving. Her lips, a slight tremble on her lips, but that's all. But I noticed when the voice spoke, her chest went up and down. So I watched her very carefully. And then, after a while, I challenged her and I said, Janet, that voice is coming from you. She said, oh no, it's not. I said, yes, it's coming from you, Janet. She says, not. I said, if it's not coming from you, where is it coming from? She says, coming from behind me. I said, you sure? She said, absolutely certain. That voice is not coming from me, it's coming from behind me. So we did a test later on, sometime later. We did just a simple test, not terribly scientific, but a simple test. We put a microphone in front of her throat, one on the back of her neck. And we found that the one on the back of her neck was louder than the one on her throat. Shouldn't be so.
as I looked up, on the top right-hand side window there was what I thought was a face, you know, somebody looking out, and those rooms aren't actually used anymore because, you know, they're rotten, completely rotten. It looked like a child. It looked like just a little boy. It was so quick. It was just as, it was like a blink. It was just like I just don't know. It just looked like a little boy. I mean, other things do happen here. It's the room upstairs. It contains all the cleaning things that we have in the shop, which is the overstock. Normally, things are sort of ruxed about, you know, thrown on the floor. Like we have big 1 kilogram tubs of Swarfiga. We had 5 of those broken in different places on the floor upstairs. That was overnight and everything's locked up, obviously, when we go to work, so nobody could have possibly gone in there. Like last year, I was getting some garden furniture and there was somebody walking about upstairs and I needed some help, and I called out and there was nobody there, and it sort of stopped. And when I went back out there, there was somebody pacing about upstairs again, so I ran upstairs and there was nobody there. There's nobody in the room.
When she was about 13, she came down to breakfast one morning and said that she had seen a Roman in a toga in her bedroom. And I thought, oh yes, that sounds a bit far-fetched, a teenage fantasy. But Debbie, later on that day, went out in the garden, was playing, and came in with a small coin in her hand, which turned out to be a Roman coin with the head of Septimus Severus on it. So I was quite excited by this because it was quite unusual. And so soon after seeing this Roman in her room, about 3 months later, she had the same experience and saw the same gentleman in her bedroom, and she found the second coin on the site, and soon afterwards she saw him again and found the third coin on the site. Now all the coins had the same head, the head of Septimus Severus on them. Once was unusual, twice was coincidence, 3 times was a bit more than coincidence. And although I've never experienced or seen Septimus Severus there at all, we do have funny things happen in the house, like the curtains have been taken down, all sorts of odd things of that nature. And I believe that Debbie saw him because she happens to be susceptible to these things.